Hello viewers. In my previous lecture, I had discussed some basic fundamentals of carbohydrates. That is, carbohydrates can be simple or complex. When I say simple, we mean those carbohydrates which can be digested or metabolized easily, that is glucose or fructose. That is, they are ready source of energy, whereas complex carbohydrates take little time to be metabolized. For example, starch. That is, if person is feeling low in energy, then he should take a chocolate because that is the instant source of energy. Then we had studied that carbohydrates can be classified into monosaccharides, disaccharides, oligosaccharides and polysaccharides depending on the number of monomer units present in them. Or we can also say that a polysaccharide is a carbohydrate which on hydrolysis will give many units of simple sugars, that is monosaccharides. We had also discussed the classification of monosaccharides on the number of carbon atoms and the functional groups present in them. Say, for example, if a molecule has 3 carbons in it, we call it as tri, and we add the word "ose" to it, which indicates that it is a monosaccharide which is having 3 carbons in it. And therefore, if it is having 4 carbons, it is indicated by tetro. If it is having 5 carbons, it is penta, and if it is having 6 carbons, it is hexose. And now, if it has an aldehydic group, we name it as aldotriose, and it has 3 carbons in it. So, what does this aldotriose indicate? It indicates that this molecule has 3 carbons in it. It is a monosaccharide and it has an aldehydic group. And the simplest example of aldotriose is glyceraldehyde. And if the functional group is ketonic, it is known as ketotriose, and the simplest example of ketotriose is dihydroxyacetone. This I had discussed with you in great details in my last lecture. So just to summarize it, if we talk of aldotetrosis, we have erythrose and threose we can take as examples, and a ketotetrose will be erythrulose. And if we talk of pentosis, that is then aldopentose is ribose and ketopentose is ribulose. And if we talk of aldohexose, then the example is glucose. And if we talk of ketohexose, then the example is fructose. Here I have just taken one example. There can be many of these. So in today's lecture, we shall be discussing the structural aspects of monosaccharides. So that means in my previous lecture, I had discussed with you the classification and the nomenclature of monosaccharides. And we know that monosaccharides are polyhydroxy aldehydes, or they are polyhydroxy ketones, and these monosaccharides then combine together through glycosidic linkages to form disaccharides, oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. So that means now we have to study the geometry or the structure of these molecules. So today's lecture will include the study of stereochemistry, enantiomers and Fischer projections and D and L notations. In the next lecture, we shall be discussing diastereomers, epimers and anomers. So, since a molecule of monosaccharide, that is if we talk of glyceraldehyde, it has 1 chiral carbon and glucose has 4 chiral carbons. So, that means we have to study the stereochemistry of monosaccharides and also the how these monosaccharides will form cyclic structures and go on to combine to give us disaccharides and maybe the cyclic structures also. So we'll have to study stereochemistry, which is a subdivision of chemistry, in great details. Why do we have to study stereochemistry in detail? Because it involves the study of relative arrangement of atoms within the molecule in space. So we say that when we are studying stereochemistry, we are paying special attention to stereoisomers. And what are these stereoisomers? We know that stereoisomers are those isomers which have same molecular formula, same structural formula, but they differ in three-dimensional orientation of these atoms in space. In other words, we can say that they have the same molecular formula, they have the same structural formula, but the arrangement of atoms in space is different. Therefore, that means we are taking the third dimension, that is, we are taking the third structure. We are considering the structure of the molecule in space. Therefore, stereochemistry is also known as 3D chemistry. The prefix stereo means three-dimensionality. That means we will be discussing the configuration of the molecules in this structure. So why do we have to study, or why do we have to pay so much of attention to stereochemistry and configurational isomers in case of carbohydrates? Because monosaccharides, which are the simplest units of carbohydrates, they are chiral molecules, and these chiral molecules undergo reaction to form glycosidic linkage, in which they form a disaccharide, and they can even give us oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. That means we have to pay attention, or we have to concentrate on the structures of monosaccharides, because they are the basic building blocks of disaccharides, oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. So since, as I have already said, that glyceraldehyde as one is the simplest monosaccharide, and this is the simplest monosaccharide which is optically active. So that means we will have to study the chiral molecules and see why are they so important in the branch or in the study of stereochemistry. These molecules, I am now talking, we'll concentrate initially on glyceraldehyde, have the capacity to rotate the path of plane polarized light. See, if we talk of normal light, its particles are vibrating in all directions. But when we talk of a plane polarized light, which is also known as PPL, its particles vibrate only in one direction, which are perpendicular to the path of propagation. And when this light is passed through an optically active compound, these compounds or these molecules have a tendency to change the path of plane polarized light. So, do you think all molecules can do so? No, it is only certain molecules which can be optically active. And why do we call these molecules optically active? Because they have the tendency to change the path of plane polarized light. That is, the groups in these molecules interact with the light and they will change its direction. So we say that these molecules, in order to be optically active, they should be chiral. Now, what do we mean by saying that a molecule should be chiral? We mean that this molecule should have an asymmetric carbon, which is also known as stereogenic carbon. And as you can see on your screens, I have shown you the structure of a ball and stick model of a molecule which is chiral. Now, when I am saying that this molecule is chiral, what I am meaning here is that in the ball and stick model, this carbon, the central carbon, is the chiral carbon. That is, it is attached to 4 different groups, and these 4 different groups are shown by 4 balls which are different in color. So to be chiral, a molecule should be asymmetric if it is having one chiral carbon. If it is having more than one chiral carbon, then the molecule should be dissymmetric. That is, it should not have any element of symmetry, that is plane of symmetry, center of symmetry, alternating axis of symmetry, or simple axis of symmetry. All these symmetry elements I have discussed in my previous lectures. So now when we go talk of a chiral molecule, here I have shown you the structure of 2-butanol. And what we find in 2-butanol, this central carbon is chiral since it is attached to 4 different groups. One of them is a hydroxyl group, second is methyl, third is ethyl, and fourth is the hydrogen atom. So what we find here, that the orientation of these groups in the molecule will affect the optical rotation of this molecule as to whether it will rotate the molecule in the right hand direction or whether it will rotate the plane polarized light in right hand direction or in left hand direction. That means the configuration, that is the arrangement of atoms in space, will play a very vital role when we are talking of the way in which this molecule will affect the path of plane polarized light. And we know that these chiral molecules are non-superimposable on their mirror images. So to be chiral, what we find is that the molecule should be non-superimposable on its mirror image. And the molecules which are non-superimposable on their mirror images are called enantiomers. So enantiomers, what is this term enantiomers? What does it mean? Enantiomers is derived from a Greek word enantio, which means opposite, and meros means parts. That means that the object and its image will be non-superimposable. That is, if we look into the image of the molecule in the mirror, we will find that it will be non-superimposable on its object. For example, here I have taken an example of an amino acid. So we know what is an amino acid. An amino acid is a compound in which carbon is attached to a carboxylic group, a amino group, a hydrogen, and an alkyl group. So this alkyl group can be hydrogen, but if it was hydrogen, it would be optically inactive. The molecule would not be chiral. So this R can be methyl, this can be phenyl, it can be any group, and this will become now optically active. Now imagine that this is one hand and this is the other hand. These are the two hands which are representing these two molecules. Now what we do is that we superimpose, that we try to superimpose these molecules, and what we find here, that if we try to superimpose these molecules, we will find that the thumb of both the hands will not superimpose on each other, right? Similarly, the little fingers, the middle finger, the index finger, and the ring fingers, they will not superimpose. So we will say that they will form non-superimposable mirror images of each other. Now one of these enantiomer will be dextrorotatory, which will be indicated by a small d or a plus, and other will be levorotatory, which will be indicated by a small l or a minus sign. So what do we mean by saying dextro? Dextro means right. So that means that enantiomer will rotate the path of plane polarized light in right hand direction, whereas a levorotatory compound will rotate the path of plane polarized light in left hand direction. And since these molecules or these enantiomers are changing the path of plane polarized light, they are known as optical isomers, and the phenomena is known as optical isomerism. So what we observed here, that if I go back to my structure, what we find that the two molecules have the same molecular formula, but they have the same structures, that is, they have the same groups, but the arrangement of groups in molecule in space is different. So for example, if you look at the first, that is the left hand example, left hand, what we find that the R is on the right hand side, the H is on the left hand side. And if we look at the mirror image, we find that the R is on the right hand side and H is on the left hand side. I repeat that in one structure, R is on the right hand side and H is on the left hand side, and when we look at its mirror, we find that H is on the right hand side and R is on the left hand side. So we say that these compounds have identical structure, but the arrangement of atoms in molecule in space is different. So now, as I've already told you, that the smallest aldose, which is optically active and in whose name O's is not present, is an aldotriose, and that aldotriose is glyceraldehyde. As you can see on your screens, this molecule of glyceraldehyde is optically active, and it is named, and it has an aldehyde group, it has a hydrogen, it has a hydroxyl group, and it has a hydroxymethyl group attached to it. That means that this carbon is chiral in nature. So since this molecule has a chiral carbon, as you can see, this is the perspective formula of glyceraldehyde, we find that this molecule is going to be dextrorotatory. And dextrorotatory, here we've written D in bracket, which indicates that this molecule will rotate the path of plane polarized light in right hand direction, whereas this molecule will rotate the path of plane polarized light in left hand direction. So when we talk of the perspective formula, I'll quickly tell you what we mean by this. The bonds which are shown by straight line and the groups which are attached to it are in the plane of the paper, and this hydrogen which is shown by a broken line, it indicates that this group is going away from the observer, and this solid wedge indicates that hydroxymethyl group is coming towards the observer. So perspective formula is the planar form of the three-dimensional structure. We shall be discussing the D and the L orientations even for these molecules. I'll show you how to assign D and the L configurations to a molecule even when it is present in its perspective formula. So now what you have to keep in mind is that the sign of rotation, that is small d, small l, or plus or minus, does not indicate the actual configuration of the compound. It only tells us that this molecule is going to be dextrorotatory and this is going to be levorotatory. And to study whether the compound is dextrorotatory or levorotatory, we need an instrument, that is polarimeter, which will tell us how much is the deviation in the angle. That is, whether it is plus 53 deviation or the plus 50 minus 53, that is the angle by which that particular compound is rotating the path of plane polarized light. But it does not, remember, it does not tell us anything about the configuration of the molecule. And please remember, while we are studying stereochemistry, the configuration is very, very important. Why so? So what I have said is that it is very essential to specify the configuration at each chiral center to completely explain the structure of a compound. That is, small d and small l will not explain what is the structure of the compound. So that means that the stereoisomer is recognized by its configuration and not by its property of rotation. That is, whether it is d or it is l. That means now we have to study configuration, and we have to study in detail the methods by which we can assign configuration to monosaccharides in order to understand their structures. So why is this configuration important? Why is it more important than the optical rotation? See, we do not have a polarimeter in our body which will recognize that, okay, fine, this molecule is dextrorotatory and this molecule is revorotatory. How do metabolic activities, or how does a drug action, how does a drug act in a body, how does it interact in a body, will depend upon the configuration of the molecule. This we shall be discussing in detail. And as I've told you in my previous lecture also, the configuration plays a very important role when we talk of enzyme-substrate interaction. What I mean here by enzyme-substrate interaction is that it is just like a lock and a key. That is, you've got to have a specific structure for an enzyme to act on a substrate, just like a particular key will only fit into a particular lock. We cannot randomly fit any key into any lock and open it. Similarly, we've got to have complementary configurations for an enzyme substrate interaction to take place. And again, I have discussed with you in my previous lecture recognition of blood groups by the antigen antibody interactions, right? So that is how, because of the antigen antibody interaction, our body comes into the fighting mode and we are able to fight the bacteria. And it is also important for many other biological processes. So now we have to, in the next lecture, I shall be discussing with you the configurations, that is the relative configuration, the DL configuration, and the enantiomers and diastereomers and anomers of monosaccharides. For this lecture, I had referred to the books by Wade, Bruce, and you can also refer to these books because these books are very important and they explain the concepts very nicely. Thank you.